Evening, everybody. My name is Georgia, and I'm working with the Ohana Gardens Project of Food Security Hawaii. And welcome to our very first webinar. We're going to offer these on the first and third Thursdays of every month through June currently, and on the assumption and prayer that we will continue to be funded by the county next year. We will continue right on through with our next funding round starting in July. So this evening, Miss Jenny Pell, world-renowned permaculturalist and Maui resident, is going to teach us about food islands. And I just want to be sure to thank our sponsors before we get started. Big mahalo, of course, to the County of Maui. And also, we are funded by the Healy Foundation, the Hawaii Community Foundation's Resiliency Fund, the Atherton Family Foundation. And we want to make a big mahalo to Wade Bauer for the artwork that he provided for the promotional and the Grow Food Islands concept that he's depicted in his wonderful art. And I'll be monitoring the chat this evening. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, and I will interrupt Jenny at the most opportune upcoming moment and voice your question. Of course, you're also welcome to chime in. There will be Q&A opportunities. And for the sake of bandwidth and making sure that this is all moving smoothly, I'm going to ask you to turn your videos off unless you're speaking, or maybe right at the very end as we do a group Q&A. But during the presentation, let's all turn our videos off and give Jenny all that bandwidth, and we'll go from there. You're welcome to direct message me anytime you want, or shoot out put your questions to everyone so everybody can see that conversation ongoing. And thank you for coming, and let's get started. Thanks, Jenny.
Okay, great. I see the screen share is working. Here we go. And pop over here. And move into present mode. Okay, is that up there on the screen, Georgia?
Yes, that looks great. Fantastic.
Okay, good. Okay, so hi everybody. I am just learning how to use the new platform for the using Google Drive slides instead of PowerPoint, and they have this weird way of advancing slides. So if it goes a little wonky, I apologize up front. So hi everyone, this is Jenny Pell. I'm over here in Haiku, and we've been really looking forward to starting this webinar series, and we want to do 2 webinars a month. We're open to ideas on topics that you'd like us to cover. We are a project of Food Security Hawaii. It's a local nonprofit that's been on Maui about 10 years, and in the past has focused on sort of broader scale soil regeneration, regenerative farming, carbon sequestration, and other bigger food security projects. This particular project is all about the local, in your backyard and neighborhood food. And a couple times during the slideshow, I'll show ways you can get a hold of us. I'm assuming if you're all here now, you more or less know how to find us. Okay, so food security, in my opinion, it really starts in our own backyards and neighborhoods. And at Ohana Gardens, we're a COVID response project. So this initiative began pretty much exactly a year ago, sitting in a board meeting. My sister lives at the epicenter of the outbreak of COVID in Italy. So last year, she was on the phone with me every day. It's coming all over the world. It's going to get to you too. We have to all take action. And our action was to launch this backyard and neighborhood foods program, thinking mostly that it would be an iteration of Victory Gardens. And we were inspired by, in World War II, 40% of local food came from backyard gardens within a year. What happened there, and what also happened here, is that growing vegetables is hard, and particularly in the tropics. We're plagued with bugs. You have to know what you're doing. The long-term ability to keep up with your garden, it takes a lot of work. And so what we've learned ourselves over the last year is that we have a lot more success with perennial food than we do with annual food, with vegetables. So what we want to do in this project is resilience, abundance. We want to build skills and embed them in our neighborhoods. We want to help you grow enough that you have enough for your table, you have enough to share. Maybe you can use it for barter. And for some people, they may even want to sell their produce. Our big aspirational, inspirational goal is 1,000 new gardens planted this year and 10,000 food trees in the ground. We collaborated over the last few months with all the Rotary Clubs of Maui and Uncle George Kahumoku on the Gifting Tree Project through their service, annual service project. And we have already almost 3,500 trees distributed and planted. So we're really excited to just take this forward, and we're going to tell you how we intend to do that in this project. Okay, so I'm a permaculturalist. I've been doing permaculture consulting, design, education for more than 30 years now. And I've worked a lot in the tropics. I've worked all over Central America. I've worked on the Big Eye, been here in Maui for 8 years. I've also worked all over the Pacific Northwest, and I have a lot of really, talented colleagues in the permaculture world. And since moving to Maui, I've met a lot of, indigenous Hawaiian farmers, and I'm learning from them how they do their companion planting here. The various names for food, we're sort of rebranding it as food islands because it seems really apropos for Maui. Essentially, it's just another way of saying companion planting. In permaculture, we call them guilds. In Britain, they call it forest gardening or agroforestry landscapes. I've been doing my research with the Craig Elovich books, where he's traveled all around Polynesia and looked at how they do what they call mixed tree gardens or polycultures. So essentially what we're doing, like this picture here shows, when you have this little baby fruit tree, you want to have things in the understory that support that tree's long-term success, right? We want to usually minimize competition between the plants. Sometimes we want to maximize competition between the plants. And so an example would be if you have two plants that are going to fill the same niche or space that a comfrey, that's what that big green leafy plant is in the picture, we don't necessarily want one that's filling the same function. But we want to maximize the competition between grass. So comfrey has an exudate at its root, a chemical exudate at its root that repels grass. So it's a really great one to put around the edge of your little tree, of your little food island. We definitely want to design to optimize management and how to get at the harvest. You can also look at including livestock, fungi, lots of other elements in here. One of the things we really want to do in our tree guild is also put things in it that are going to attract us to visit on a regular basis. The more we go to that food island, the more we're going to see what's going on with the tree. And the tree is the long-term plant that we want, right? So in the short term, we have an enormous amount of time and space to play with while we're waiting for our tree to mature. So in permaculture, what we talk a lot about is, we observe what goes on in nature. Nature's our teacher, our first teacher. And what we want to do is mimic what nature does in a forest. In an agroforestry system, we want to put things in there that we want to use, what we want to harvest, what we want to access. So what we've done is identified the 7 main layers. So the canopy, the overstory, the big, large trees with huge canopy can be timber trees. They can be large fruit and nut trees. And then moving into the understory, we have smaller trees. We can have dwarf trees. We can have berries and shrubs. We can have all kinds of culinary herbs, things that we use in the kitchen. In the Pacific Northwest, we put a lot of berries, and I'm learning more and more that there are more tropical berries than I thought there were. So I'm getting acquainted with those as I'm learning here. All kinds of things in the herbaceous layer. And then we want to get down into the ground covers, all the way down into the underground, which is the rhizomes and the roots, where we have the medicinal and the edible crops. And you can certainly put in vines and creepers. I think in the tropics, it's a little tricky because they can be so heavy and they can take over. So you have to be careful not to you don't want to trellis your lilikoi up your baby tree. That wouldn't work very well. So what we also are doing is building tilth, or we're building soil health all the while. So what I like about graphics like these is they show the plants above ground and then they show the plants below ground as well. So we really want to look at the vitality of the soil. One of the really biggest challenges of doing any kind of food growing in the tropics is that the fertility equation is is challenging to keep up with. Like we always have to be finding strategies that are going to feed the soil and feed the plants. So choosing things that are natural green manures or that you can chop and drop, that as they grow, you cut them back and leave them for mulch on the ground. Those are the kind of plants we want to put in our system, particularly if you're going to be a more participatory farmer or gardener. If you're just going to be someone who just wants absolute minimal maintenance, there's strategies for that too. So you can take it all the way from, I want to have 15 things in my understory and I'm going to be right at my back door and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to glean from it and I'm going to harvest from it every day, to I just want my tree to survive and I want to help it along, but I'm not going to pay a whole lot of attention. So we're going to look at different, all the way on that spectrum of choices, what we can do. So here's another graphic that shows a swale, which is not a ditch, but it's like a ditch, but it's a little depression in the soil on contour, so that when it rains, it fills up, but it doesn't drain off. And what we've learned, and swales aren't for every single design, but if you're in a drier landscape and you're trying to find ways to hold water in the soil, swales is an excellent strategy for building up soil water in the soil. So what you do is you mark out on contour across the slope. So instead of the water just sheeting down and running off or eroding the soil as it goes down the hill, we're going to interrupt that, and that water is going to slowly infiltrate into the soil. And then that on the downhill slope of that, we're going to plant the things that are going to take advantage of that increased water in the soil. This is combining yet another method called hugelkultur, which is putting woody debris in a pile, berming over that. And then as that woody debris decomposes, it adds fertility into the soil. So it's a berm for the swale, it's fertility, slow release of fertility over time, and then it gives us a little contour on the land for planting our different types of trees. So you can see that the specimen trees there are going to grow right at the base of that berm. And if you want to look up swales, if you're keen to find out more about that, there's lots and lots of internet content on hugelkultur and on swales that you can just look up. But if you look at this picture, you can see there's not just bare dirt really anywhere in this tree guild, in this food island. So there's different herbaceous plants. There's filling different niches within that 7 layers of the forest canopy. And these are obviously plants for a different climate, but there are plenty of things that are the analog plants, or the ones that we would use in the tropics rather than what we would use in the Pacific Northwest or in Northern Europe. So we can use pigeon pea, which is a fast growing nitrogen fixer. You can eat the peas both green, and you can let them dry and eat them as a hard bean. It's a staple crop for Puerto Rico called gandul, and it grows, like I said, grows really fast, and then you can just chop it back and just leave all that debris to just decompose right in place. It's probably like a 3-year plant, so you have lots of time to use that one in your system. Instead of gooseberry and currants, we can use things like poha berry or Inca berry. Some places you can even grow strawberries around here. Obviously, we can do the clovers and the nasturtiums and the different flowers, but we have different things that fill these different niches. It's so funny teaching online because I'm used to being able to have this interaction with the people that I'm talking to, and you're just sort of in this space all by yourself. Okay, so when we're looking at our tree guilds, when we're looking at the things we want in those food islands, there's a specific niches that we want to fill. So the first thing we want to fill, like again, we're trying to be in service to that tree. What's going to make that tree grow healthy and vital and not get predated on by pests? Like, how are we going to integrate the pest management? So we want plants that are going to feed the tree. Those are the first things that we're looking at. I really like the word tilth, the soil tilth, building up that soil fertility, getting those microbes in the soil going. And so we're looking at the nitrogen fixtures and the green manures, right? So those are really important plants to have in there. I put a picture in here of the peanut grass with that yellow flower on top. It turns out the yellow flower is edible. You can throw that in your salads, but it's both a pollinator ground cover. It cools the soil. It requires less water to irrigate, but it also fixes nitrogen. So there's those green manures. Comfrey is an excellent chop and drop mulch. It's also a pollinator attractor. So the small fruits and berries, those are the things that that are gonna pull you over to that guild, right? So if you know that your strawberries are ready, or you know that there's Inca berries to pick, or you know that there's small fruits that are ready to go. I used to plant a lot of tree tomato. I haven't done that in a long time, but that's another sort of small fruiting shrub, smaller fruiting tree that we can use in the system. I love to put enormous amounts of flowers in the understory, both because it's beautiful. And, I think of flowers as soul food, but they also, of course, are really important for the pollinators. In the Pacific Northwest, what we would do is make sure that we had flowers that bloomed before the tree bloomed in the understory. So the bees had the habit of coming to that tree before the tree's flowers opened. And that way you can ensure a lot more pollination success on your fruit. I had some milkweed plants in my garden, and the monarch butterfly caterpillars just ate every single leaf. So I guess I need more of that in my system. They're always really nice for fragrance. Some people like to do moon gardens to attract the nighttime pollinators, and those plants tend to be highly fragrant, all the things that bloom at night, because they are depending more on the fragrance than they are on the look. I just found in my seed collection, we had a couple volunteers came over to help us organize all our seeds. And I have a whole huge packet that's just called insectary mix. And I'd forgotten that I had it. So I'm going to seed out a bunch of that to use in these guilds. So here's something a lot of people don't know. An integrated pest management system is really important for the tropics. It's important anywhere, but it's particularly important here because the bugs that eat all of our food, it doesn't take them long to find the food around here. So anything that when you touch it, gives off a fragrance, anything with volatile oils, those things are often culinary. So they're herbs, mints, lemongrass, citronella, basils, rosemary, all those things that fill that niche. They repel the bad bugs, but they also attract the good bugs. So if you have your tree and in the understory, you have these plants that attract the good bugs, when the bad bugs show up, they're just waiting underneath to get them, right? So they're just laying in there ready to munch on those bad bugs. So I have in my garden where I do grow vegetables and I do have to pull things out because the bugs get them, but I put herbs in every single bed. The ends of every garden bed, every corner that I have, every edge that I have has herbs. And I use them almost every day. I have chives, thyme, oregano, 4 kinds of basil, all of those. I have lemongrass, we have cardamom, we have all kinds of things that smell good and are culinary, but they're also filling that niche in my garden. The cilantro, I let it go to flower, and then I let it go to seed. So my cilantro is covered with bees every day right now. So these are the kinds of things we want to use for our integrated pest management. We have the edible ground covers, and then we move into the tubers and rhizomes. You can definitely put gingers and turmerics and sweet potatoes and things like that in your understory. You want to be careful not to disturb the soil too much when you're digging stuff up. I often will put in things, if the soil's not very good, I'll plant things that I'll purposely leave in the soil to rot. So a good example for that is a daikon radish or beets. If you put the daikon radish in, you let it, grow, they got those big cylinders. I think they can just get huge, but they'll just pop the soil open. And if you leave them in place, they'll rot. And then the worms will come and the bugs will come, and then that'll provide fertility into the soil. So that's just another strategy for helping us build soil tilth, is to let some of the tubers stay in the ground and rot. And of course, when your trees are...
Jenny, I have a quick question about that.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. Personally, I was talking this through with one of my mentors, and we were wondering if the rotting daikon would bring weevils or other things like that you would want to be concerned about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, that one of the things I see over and over again on the what's going wrong with my garden is those little white grubs, right? Those little white grubs are nasty. They eat the roots of your vegetables, and particularly brassicas. And so if you get those little grubs, you're kind of, that's not good. I haven't had that problem with daikon. I suppose if you had an enormous quantity of it, that would be a challenge. But I think of it as a strategy, particularly in really poor soil. So yeah, I don't know. I've never had that problem. So
Okay, thank you.
I'll think about it. So the rhizomes are things like ginger, turmeric, cardamom is in that same family, but that's something we use for the seed. And it's a culinary baking thing that the spices from the seed. I've seen a lot of people put vegetables right in their understory. Again, when you have a little baby tree that's just, pencil thin and only 2 feet tall, you have an enormous amount of room there to throw vegetables in. Pick stuff that's that's really hardy. Don't pick stuff that's going to attract bugs, or that is finicky, and make sure that it's going to grow well in where you live. So don't try to grow beefsteak tomatoes in haiku or hoilo. They just won't do it. You could try a cherry tomato, but don't just make sure you do your homework on the vegetables. I sort of joke about, people say, why don't you grow more kale in your garden? And I joke that the minute I think of putting in brassicas in my garden, the little white moth flies by. Like they know, the minute you're thinking about it, they know to come to the garden. So I've had a great success with onions, chard, parsleys, amaranth. There's lots of things that you can grow successfully that don't require a lot of tending. If you really want to put vegetables in your understory, consider putting them in a couple large containers. If you have a lot of success in your container gardening, great. Then you can expand that and go into a raised bed. But if you put the vegetables right in the ground and you don't protect it from the chickens, you're just going to lose them all. So make sure you think through your vegetable strategy really well. The tropics has an enormous amount of perennial greens that the gigantic majority of people have never heard of, don't know how to eat it. They often, in permaculture gardens, I see people plant them and I see them in people's gardens, but very few people eat them. So I think we should have a separate webinar, Georgia, on perennial greens, what they are, how to harvest them, how to grow them, how to propagate them, how to cook with them, make sure that you're, cooking them properly. So an example would be chaya, C-H-A-Y-A. Chaya it's the highest protein leaf in the world. It grows like gangbusters in the wetter, more humid, lower down parts of the tropics here, like haiku grows great around here. So chaya, you cannot, like kalo, eat it raw. End of story. You can't eat it raw. So you have to cook it. You have to cook it properly. But if you do put it into your diet, you're getting this huge amount of protein from a free local perennial source. So we have, they're great to put in your permaculture tree guild in your food island. So I'll just rattle off a few. There's katuk, which is a nutty flavored leaf. There's baby moringa, but you have to not let it get gigantic because it'll take over the size of your fruit tree. Chaya, bele, there's several different varieties of bele, which is a hibiscus in the hibiscus family. There's 3 or 4 different spinaches, perennial spinaches. There's Okinawan spinach and New Zealand spinach. There's cranberry hibiscus. There's also an African sorrel that they make the hibiscus tea out of. Those are all understory plants and shrubs that really should be included in this, because they're just, when you think about food security, these are really, really easy ones to grow. So we already talked a little bit about vines. Like I said, I'm a little cautious about vines because they can be really hardy, like a chayote, but a chayote is going to grow along the ground, right? So I don't think of that as being so much of a climber, but another one that I'm experimenting with now is jicama. Jicama is a tuber, but it's a vining plant, and I'm just learning how to grow that, so I can't necessarily endorse it, but I'm fiddling with that one. And of course, another great thing we want to have in the understory is medicinals. And I count that as ginger and turmeric, comfrey root, mints, all those things count as medicinals, but you can put other medicinals in your understory. So any questions on that one before I move on to the next slide?
I got a quick one.
Go.
I'm just curious about anyone having comfrey take over and how one would deal with comfrey taking over.
Right. So comfrey is kind of like the sorcerer's apprentice, right? So if you pop a rototiller over it, you're going to have a million comfrey plants. So I tend to plant it around the drip line of the fruit tree. So if I have a fruit tree in the middle, I'll put, 4, around the outside. And then I will, as soon as it gets big enough, I just zip it down and lay it down as mulch. It's it can take over, but it's so useful in the ecosystem that I don't worry about it. I use it as mulch constantly. So that's my key answer. What you want to be really careful of is to not fragment up the root, because each piece of root will grow a new plant. Some places around here, comfrey doesn't flower, but when it does flower, it's really, really great for the bees. Okay, next one. Okay, so here's a really simple tropical food island, which is Guild. So here we have the banana. You guys can recognize the banana circle. We have the sweet potato as the ground cover. There's cassava in there. And this is a perfect spot right in the middle of that. You can plant a baby fruit tree, particularly one that needs to be shaded when it's little. And a really good example of that is a mangosteen. So mangosteen is a really slow growing tree that maybe won't bear for as long as 10 or 12 years. And so it gets sunburned if you don't shade it. But what's really nice about the banana guild, putting the bananas around your fruit tree, is that the feeder roots of the fruit tree are really close to the surface, and they will actually grow right into the culm of the banana and drink water from the banana. So it's a really good thing to have in your fruit tree guild if you can grow bananas. Bananas will grow all the way up into Keokea. So, I think that bananas are an excellent part of any guild. They will bear in about 9 months to a year. When they're done, when you've harvested the rack of bananas, you can just cut the stalk down and you can just lay those segments of the log just around the edges of your tree guild, and it'll decompose in place. Here's a little emergency sidetrack. If you're in the jungle and you're lost, you can cut a banana and hollow out a little bowl in the top, and you can drink water from it in a few minutes. So sweet potato greens are also a great food source locally. Most people don't eat them or don't even know about them, but sweet potato greens are really, really high in iron. They're excellent for lactating moms. So they're a really great source of iron for moms. And they're obviously just abundant all over here. So I love to, figure out how to integrate these foods into our diet. Again, sweet potato greens are something you have to cook. And you want to make sure you cook it long enough and well enough. And, if there's any reason to let it go a little longer, let it go a little longer, that's fine. The water from those steamed greens or boiled greens can also be used in a stock for soup. You can add them to all kinds of things. We did a project in Nicaragua where we had an abandoned 75 acres that was all bananas and plantains. And we went through with bags of seeds of the different plants that we wanted to grow. And we would walk so many paces and we would cut down like a 6 to 10 foot swath of bananas. And we would just take the seed and stick it right into the root ball of the banana that we cut down. And then we would mulch with all the bananas we cut down. And then we would just leave it and we would scatter seeds of other things we wanted to grow. And then we would just walk so many paces, leave the other bananas growing and plant. So we started at one end of the property and we just worked our way down with a crew of people. And in a few days, we had planted this huge acreage of abandoned banana plantation. And then in 5 years, there were so many mangoes that nobody had planned ahead of time what to do with the harvest when it started to really come on. We also alley cropped with pigeon pea, through that system. So then we had a huge rat problem. So one of the things we want to make sure we think about long-term is we want to, when we plant our trees, we have an option, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, of registering those trees, not registering them, of putting them on a map. Like here's where some trees are planted. And we want to make sure that people, harvest the trees that they have, or have it as a neighborhood resource if you're not going to harvest it. So let's lean into that 5-7 year window, that if we get all the 10,000 trees even this year planted, that we want to make sure that we're going to eat that food when it comes available. Okay, so here's a really interesting challenge for us, which is what grows where. That picture with the fabulous view there, that is the lavender farm up high, right? What was that, 4,000 feet? It's not the same as Kipahulu by any stretch. So Maui is blessed with a stunning array of microclimates where we can grow everything from olives, to dwarf coconuts, jackfruit to pomegranates. And Georgia and I have been sort of scratching our heads about like, okay, what's it going to take for us to put together this what grows where information source? And then I just had a meeting with Rob Weltman from Tree Hawaii in the Sierra Club, and it turns out he's already done it. So he's given me access to this huge database, which I have that in a slide coming up, and I'm gonna zip over to their website afterwards and just walk people through this chart that he has. And we're going to spend a little time with that database. He has it for all plants. So it'll be like this zone grows all these things. And then we're going to dial down the rheostat on that and have, here are the food growing plants that grow in this area. And of course, it's not quite simple. I mean, some people have long, skinny properties that go up high and down low. And even on your own property, you can have crazy microclimates of what will grow at the bottom versus what will grow at the top based on temperature and soil reality and all kinds of things. But in general, we're just looking for helping people really not waste their time planting breadfruit over 2,000 feet or coconuts over 2,000 feet. I mean, they'll grow, but they won't bear fruit. So let's pick the things that are appropriate for where you live. All right, so here's a really important part of tree planting. And then in the permaculture design courses, this is like weeks of study, and this is years of study, like understanding what's going on your site and the patterns on that landscape to help us choose the right location for the tree in the first place. So this is something that I'm going to be teaching when we do the in-person trainings. We're going to go over this a little bit more to make sure that people understand the core mistakes that people often make. One of them, so that top picture that shows the house with all the different heights of the trees, the one thing you don't want to do is plant a giant mango tree in front of your lanai with the western facing view, because it'll grow and it's big and dark and thick, and that who wants to cut down the tree once it starts to bear fruit? So we really want to make sure that we site things properly. And, it may look like a clunky picture over here on the right, but you want to know where the drying winds come from. You want to know in a rain event where the water is going to flow through your property. You don't want to plant your fruit tree where the water is going to pool in the backyard. So someone like me who's been doing design work for years, like I can walk on a property and I can just look at the grass. I can tell where the septic system is. I can tell, where the water pools just from the different kinds of grasses that grow there. I can look at the shape of the tree and I can see if the wind is, blowing the tree over. So we all have the trade winds here, so it's pretty straightforward and we can mostly know that. But a lot of people forget to design for the Kona winds. And, when a big blow comes up from the south, you can really, lose all the blossoms on your tree. So we want to look at all these different sectors, all the main things that are going to help the tree grow well. We do have a fire sector here. We do have brush fires that zip in and, flare up. And we want to make sure that we're looking at strategies to mitigate that. So when you look at the other picture, this is something I took off of somebody's permaculture zones. Again, it's like the zone 1 is where you go every day. Zone 2 is where you go a few times a week, right? Zone 5 is where you never go and you don't want to do anything in there. But you want to look at, how far away do you want to put that fruit tree or that little garden? What I find is that if you don't plant stuff that's somewhat in your path that you go on every day, you're going to forget all about it. And that is as simple as 5 steps the wrong direction, the tree doesn't get taken care of versus it gets taken care of very well. So what I have people do is I have them map, I follow them around. I'm like, okay, show me how you walk around your property. Show me that, where do you park your car? What is your path from your car to your front door every day? That's where you want to plant your salad greens, right? That's where you want your herbs. But if you're going to if you want to put an orchard and you want to put it in even 4 or 5 trees or 2 or 3 trees, and you put them way the hell over there, you're going to forget about them. You just are. So let's make sure that we site things properly. So we want to know how big they get. We want to know where the water flows. We want to know where the prevailing winds come from. We want to know where the pigs and the deer, do they come up from the gulch, right? So animals have habits too. They have a pattern of how they move through the landscape. So yeah, this is a much bigger thing to think about, but the pattern literacy involved with food growing in your neighborhood is a skill. So we want to make sure that we incorporate that into our design. All right, so this is a really fun slide. So just like the plants above ground are tall or wide or skinny or have fat leaves or tiny leaves or have a spray of flowers or have one big flower, their root profiles underground are just as diverse. So if you look at this tree here, right, those feeder roots, they're really close to the surface. Most of the feeder roots of the tree will spread out along the surface. So what's happening there if it's just grass? So the grass is going to grow there. It is utterly, completely, thoroughly competing with those feeder roots for nutrients and water, right? So when you have all of these different plants with all of these different root profiles in that understory, just like they're filling all these niches above ground, we want them to fill all these niches below ground. So if you think that every single plant has millions of root tips, and every root tip can feed millions of bacteria. So you have the photosynthesis that's going on, right? So that they're taking the sunlight and they're turning into sugars, and the sugars are coming out in the roots, and you have the nitrogen fixing going on and all these things going on subsurface. That's how we get the soil diversity, biodiversity, healthy mycorrhizal fungi. That's how we get all of that healthy ecosystem in the soil that's complementing and supporting the tree roots right there by the tree. Now, if we mulch above ground so that the grass can't come in, I mean, that's a huge first step. But putting in the diversity of plants in the understory, that's when you get this sort of mimicking the forest ecosystem that really helps the tree thrive. So we want to fill the time and space above and below ground as the trees are getting bigger. Now, of course, every year the tree is going to get a little bigger, and every year the things in the understory are going to shift and change a little bit, depending enormously on how much you interact with that food island, with that tree guild. So if you just let it go over time, the things that are really robust and dominant are going to grow really big, and the things that require you to weed around them and take care of them and clip their branches off, they're going to sort of fade away if you don't pay much attention to them, which is fine. It really depends on your own, how much time you have for your garden. I will go on record, and I say it every time I give this lecture, that the biggest danger to a young fruit tree is the weed whacker. I've seen more trees damaged and compromised and struggling because people leave the grass, goes right up to the trunk, and it's like one little zip, and you've cut through the bark and you've opened up a place where bacteria and disease can get in. And it's really hard for the tree to regrow that bark, particularly if it happens again the next time. So one of the things that these understory plants and this mulch around the tree is that you don't have to weed whack anymore under the tree. So does anybody have any questions about that? Or is that, I'm hoping that this is something sort of new and interesting for people to think about. Okay, so here we go.
Jenny,
Say it again.
I said you're doing good. You sound great. Good job.
Okay.
And anybody's welcome to chime in anytime you want.
Okay, so a bunch of years ago, I co-wrote a little booklet called Establishment Guilds of the Tropics. And we had these drawings done by one of my colleagues back then. And I revisited that. It was kind of fun to read it because it's peppered with my sort of larger political opinions about corporate agroforestry, corporate chemical agriculture, which I'm like, okay, I was thinking that years ago. But here we are with these great pictures. So here we have this baby tree. If you plant it all alone, you know, it's going to get sunburned. It's going to get wind. It's going to knock it over. It's going to get predated on. It's going to have grass growing around it. It's really going to have a minimal survival rate, unless, of course, you're in like Kipahulu anyway, and it's going to grow like gangbusters. So we really want to think about that poor lonely tree. Who are his best friends, right? So here we can put right into that guild. And like I said, right next to the tree, you can stick that banana in. Right? You can stick that ground cover in, and you can stick a nitrogen fixing tree in right there, pretty much in the same hole. When you pull the tree out of its pot, the roots are likely to be root bound, which means that they can only grow within the confines of the pot. So you want to gently open those roots up because they tend to grow in the circle of the pot. And if you just stick that right in the ground, they'll continue to grow in a pot in a circle, and they'll stay root bound, and the tree will struggle and maybe not make it. So it's really important to pull those roots apart. Even if you break a few of them off, it doesn't matter. It's way more important to make sure that the roots are opened up. And if you look ahead in 2 years, here we are in the tropics, look how big that banana is, right? So the banana is giving it shade, it's giving us fruit, it's giving us windbreak, it's giving us mulch when we cut it down. The cover crop is cooling the soil, reducing our irrigation needs. We have insect and animal habitat niches, right? So within a year or two of putting in these food islands, we have a lot going on. You have chili peppers on the bush. You have, ginger is a 9-month crop. Turmeric is a 9-month crop. Papayas are a 9-month crop. So, we have this, stunning array of food available. Even in, if you're going to do some greens or some small vegetables, you can have stuff available to eat within 3 or 4 weeks or less. And every month after that, you can have something else coming online within this food island. And they don't think of them as being messy or ratty or, or unkempt. These can be fabulously landscaped, right? So if your aesthetic, or if your client's aesthetic, leans towards the more manicured, great. Let's have gorgeous food islands giving us food. I mean, that abundance, that overflowing abundance, those flowers in the ecosystem, right? Those are the kinds of things that really turn people on. And for folks that are not as keen, who don't care about the aesthetic, great. It'll be a little bit more scruffy, but it doesn't matter. It really depends on what you like. Okay, so this is moving on to some other graphics. These are a little bit hard to see, but starting in the top corner there, the coconut circle. I'm a huge fan of dwarf coconuts. I love dwarf coconuts. I'm short. I don't want to have to get on a ladder. They have gigantic racks of cocos. They're only a few feet off the ground. If you plant the coconuts in the coconut circle, they will lean away from each other, and you can take your palm fronds and just throw them right in the middle. Right? So you don't have to drag them off or haul them off or throw them down the gulch, right? So there's a little bit of, again, decomposition. You've got a place to put the fronds. If you don't have a hunting cat in your family, you have to be careful of creating rat habitat. So other people don't like to leave the palm fronds down, but if you have little hunters in your system, then it's fine. They'll hang out over there. There's another picture of a swale. So there's some, kalo growing in the swale, and you've got the sweet potatoes on the downslope. And you can show the tree root filling that niche of the berm. And you've got your nitrogen fixers, and you've got your fruit coming on. And then, of course, this one here, I put this one in because, yes, the bananas are growing right next to the fruit tree when the fruit tree is a baby. That's great. Yay for the fruit tree, right? It's getting shade, it's getting protected, it's growing into the banana to drink water, right? So we have all of these, reasons that we want to put these things together. So once those bananas get bigger, you can cut them back and leave them for mulch, like I said before. So don't worry about putting the fruit trees too close to the bananas. All right, so I don't have too many slides left, and we'll open up for questions after that. So I have sheet mulched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres in my life. It is one of my favorite ways to get the ground fertile and not have to deal with grass. You do not have to take out the grass first. There's definitely some techniques to doing sheet mulch that I've learned over the years. Basically what you're doing is you're putting down like a lasagna garden. You're putting down all these different layers in sort of a specific order. And what it does is it blocks the grass from getting any sunlight. So the grass just dies and decomposes in place. Right. So we just did one up at the Hawaiian homelands where we were doing a tree planting Food Islands project, our first big project that we did a few weeks ago. And we just saw that she had some piles of sort of drying, decomposing weeds. And we're like, let's get that. So we just hauled that over and threw that down, and we put the cardboard on top. So what I usually do is I will take my garden fork, which got like the 4 prongs, the really heavy duty one, and I'll just sort of open up little holes in the soil. And I like to put the juiciest, most fertile part of my compost down and water that in right there. So the microbes, like all the little composty bits will just sort of run down into these fingers that I've opened up with my garden fork. And you don't have to do tons of it. And you don't want to like rip it all open like a rototiller, right? We just want to open it up so that the microbes can get in there. So bacteria, when it has food and oxygen and water, will multiply every 20 minutes. It will double in population every 20 minutes. So we're going to kickstart that soil tilt, that soil fertility, by watering in the compost. Then you can put out down anything you want, weeds, grass, all kinds of things. And then you're going to water that. And then you're going to put the cardboard on top. And then on top of that, you're going to put the mulch. And then on, the compost. And then on top of that, you're going to put the mulch. So what you want to be really sure of is that the cardboard itself gets wet thoroughly before you cover it up. And if you're going to plant things, the roots have to be below the cardboard. So you can't put seeds on top of your sheet mulch. They will just die because it's just too dry on top of the cardboard. In about 6 months, all that cardboard will have decomposed. And if you haven't taken the time to rip all of the tape off of it, you're in your garden, you're like, who put this piece of plastic over here? But it's actually leftover tape from your cardboard box. So that means it's all gone. I put this other picture in here with the border around it to just show you that you can make it as snappy as you want. Like here's one that they defined their garden edge. They put down all the cardboard, make sure that you overlap it completely. If there's a little hole, that's what the grass will be like, yay, there's a hole, and there'll be grass coming up right there. So you have to make sure it's overlapped thoroughly before you put the next layer of mulch on top. And it's really, really important not to do the volcano mulch around the tree trunk. You want to make sure that it's spread out. You can't have the mulch up against the tree trunk, period. It'll make the tree rot. So you have to, I usually give it like a 6, like if this is my tree trunk, I'm going to give it a 6 or 10 inch opening, and I'll start my mulch after that. So you want to make sure it's much better to have more mulch spread out. You do not want it in a pyramid around the base of the tree. Okay, so here's a couple things on resources.
Can I get a question in?
Yep.
Can you clarify in the sheet mulch process what you define as compost?
It depends on what you
Juicy compost?
Yeah. So compost is you don't want to put really fresh compost that's going to attract rats. It needs to be already somewhat decomposed. So I really don't like rats. So I strive very hard to have rat-proof compost. And if I leave certain other kinds of compost out, the chickens just all get in it because I have feral chickens here. So I have a compost tumbler. So all of our food waste goes in the compost tumbler that I mix with leaves and other things. And then I empty that into a fenced round area and I let that sit. That is ready to go as a compost layer with a layer of mulch on top. Now the mulch can be all kinds of things. The mulch could be straw, not hay, because hay has all the seed heads in it, right? So it could be straw. You could use wood shavings. You can use mac nut husks. You could use, there's all kinds of things that can be that mulch layer, or it can be a leaves from your garden. So compost is something that's pretty juicy. Like it's got a lot of vitality in it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Jenny, I have two questions in the chat. Loxley's wondering if the tropical booklet that these great illustrations came from, if there's a way to get a copy or where it comes from.
So that the earlier ones that I did with those pictures, Loxley, just pop me out a note and email and I'll send it to you. But you have to remember that I wrote it like 20 years ago. And it's a little outdated.
Okay, and then Bethany wants to know if you could repeat what you said about seeds under the cardboard or no seeds under the cardboard.
Oh, I think I meant to say weeds. So, oh, okay, sorry, the seeds. Okay, so I've had a lot of people, they diligently do their sheet mulch, like this little, diagram shows here with the weeds underneath and the cardboard and the compost. And then they want to plant their vegetables right into that top layer. But the roots of the vegetables will go down and hit the cardboard and it dries out really fast. So what I do, if I want to plant into my sheet mulch right away, I'm going to take my garden knife and I'm going to stab through the cardboard, pull it aside, and then get the roots of my plant underneath the cardboard. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can start by mostly planting at the edge of the cardboard. You can plant the things first and put the cardboard all around it and tessellate it all around it. That's another method. Or you can get the cardboard down, get it really wet, and then it's easy to put a hole in it. So there's lots of different ways you can get your plants in the ground. You just don't want to you want to make sure that whatever you plant has access underneath the cardboard. So I've even done as simple as I've done my whole thing. I take my hori knife and I'll just go stab this direction and stab like a little X. And then I'll just with my fingers, just pull it apart and I'll put my seedling from my vegetable seedling and they'll find its way to that hole underneath. Like I don't have to do it. Like I don't have to get it all the way down in there. If I'm planting a shrub that's got a nice big root ball, you bet I'm going to open up a hole and make sure that it's in the soil below. Okay, so there's loads and loads and loads of resources online for how to grow permaculture tree guilds of the tropics, how to grow companion plants, how to design your edible landscape, and how to look at these different food island concepts. Georgia and I and a local artist, we're getting really excited about developing a series of templates for people. Here's a few things you could do. Like let's look at one of these if you guys can see it. Right, so here's your tree and they've got an artichoke and they've got nasturtiums and peas and fennels and collard greens and strawberries and rhubarb and fennel and garlic, all filling that time and space while that tree is growing. And it's got a nice defined edge, right? So that here's your little island. You can have a gorgeous lawn, you can have the most fabulous lawn, and you can have this established garden that's your little edible island, right? I like to do them also as culinary palettes. So you could have like the Thai food guild or the Italian guild. So you might have a dwarf coconut tree with, papaya and turmeric and katuk and, galangal and Thai chili peppers and Thai basil. And those could all be in one guild. And when you go to harvest from it, you're having that kind
Sam
of.
and Calvin have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, Jenny, is there an app for Maui where we can like take a picture or track where all the trees and fruit things are, like a community database? Is somebody working on that?
Yes, we have access to the whole database from Retree Hawaii right now, and they have that, and you can yourself say where you planted your tree, and you can take pictures of it and upload it. So that's I think coming up in the next slide or two. It would be great to have it as an app. I don't think we have an app, but I would love to have an app. That would be really cool. So let's hold on to that idea and I think it would be great if it were Instagram accessible too. It's like to help people, be able to share what they've done right away on Instagram. I don't use Instagram, so I need some younger people to jump in and get on the Instagram thing. So so these books over here, the Craig Elovich books, the Maui libraries have the Elovich books. I have several of them right now. Nobody else can have them because I have them. But here's, I don't know if you, I don't know if you guys can see me with my background, but here's like specialty crops for Pacific Islands. So what Craig Elovich, who lives on the Big Island, has done is he has gone all over Polynesia, all over the Hawaiian Islands, and he's researched how people do their backyard tree gardening. And he's had different people write different chapters, and then he puts that together in a compendium. And then that's available for us to read. He has a lot of his resources available for free. You can download them online. You can get them from the library. Okay, let's see. All right, so here's Retree Hawaii. I think what I'm gonna do here is just get through the rest of the slideshow, see what our time looks like. And, oh, we got a whole half hour left. So then I'm gonna go through the Retree website and show people how they've done it. And we can maybe then go to questions and answers after that. Okay, so how to get involved with Ohana Gardens. All right, so this top picture here is my garden, which now is so full of food you can't even see that garden bed underneath it. So here's where we're going with this project. We want to train 200 people how to plant food islands and help them get their whole food islands planted. Right? So we'll provide the trees and the understory plants. If you have access to financial resources, you can make a donation to our project. If you don't, it doesn't matter. If you can pay $10, great. If you need us to help you get tools, we'll buy them for you. So we want to then, once we've helped you plant your food island with the plants appropriate for where you live, get those 200 people trained up over the next year, we want, our request is, or our requirement is, I'm going to say loosely, is that you then pay it forward by helping 5 other people or 5 other ohana plant their food islands. And we'll also provide them with the plants and materials. So that's our goal. So if 200 people pay it forward into 5 gardens, there's our 1,000 new gardens. And that's pretty exciting in terms of food security, right? You can be a grower. We need thousands of trees and understory plants. You can volunteer. You could say, I'm going to grow 50 herbs and I'm going to donate that. I want to get paid for growing hundreds of plants for the understory. We can contract with you to grow for us. We have a budget from our county grant to buy plants and materials for this project. And we're trying to make our money go as far as possible so that we're also, soliciting donations from people. If you have the ability to do that, great. But if you're someone who's looking for a small business, we're trying to really share the wealth with this contract. I've bought from probably 10 different nurseries and small growers already, and I'm happy to have it be someone else next time I buy. So we're going to be putting together a menu and different templates for these food islands. And so we're looking for growers. You can volunteer. So George is going to put in the chat room how to sign up for our newsletter. I think a lot of you found out about this from the newsletter, but we have 530 people on our Facebook page that get our information too. And you can find us at mauiohanagardens@gmail.com. It's a fairly new email for me, so I'm trying to go there every day now. So be patient with us if we get a lot of emails at once, but we're going to get really systematic about getting volunteers onto small projects. We are limited by COVID, so we can't get together in big groups, but we can get together 5 people at a time, or if we're outdoors, we can sort of spread it out, right? So we had a group that got together and they brought their kids and their, and people from their household, husbands and wives. And we just asked people to stay in their ohana and do their best to not mingle with other people so much. And then you can become a garden ambassador. I'm going to do that in the next slide. We need people on our outreach committee. We want to make sure that we're servicing all of Maui County, not just a few communities. And we also have a live GoFundMe if people want to help us that way. All right, so here I'm going to talk about our Garden Ambassador program. So Um, our goal is to have a lead person, at least one in every district of Maui County, who's going to work with us to be a key person for their neighborhood. So we have the lady in the purple shirt there, Tina, up in Hawaiian Homelands. Her property is in a really high profile part of the neighborhood. It's like at the intersection of several roads. And so she, for example, when we did a project there recently, we dropped off 5 yards of soil. We dropped off all the mulch. We had a little teaching moment at her place. We did the sample installation at her place. And then we went from there to the different households to help get their trees planted. So I'm working now on some corporate sponsorship money. We want to be able to help those garden ambassadors, pay for things that they need within their neighborhood. So if you have lower income households that might not be able to afford to buy any plants, or they don't have clippers or shovels or rakes or buckets or whatever they need, rather than us try to buy them and distribute them, we're going to try to work with our garden ambassadors, and they can just go to their own neighborhoods and they can get the tools and materials that they need. So we want to be able to drop off, a truckload of plants at that person's house. And so we're looking for someone who's likes to be around, likes to be a teacher, likes to, have garden growing, wants to be that liaison for us. And we'll be helping financially with all of the things that you need to be a good ambassador. We have lots of seeds still. I have, if anybody is interested in vegetable seeds, I have lots and lots of vegetable seeds that I'm trying to distribute out to the community right now. So you can let us know if we can help get you some seeds too. So I imagine there's some questions about the Garden Ambassadors Program. And here's how you find us. We're on the web. We have a web page. Georgia and I are going to be kicking the web page next week. We're going to have some links out to Retree. We're going to have the archives of our webinars. We're going to be making it a very interactive website. There's how to find us on email. Our Facebook page, I try to post 3 or 4 things a week on the Facebook page, but the newsletter is going to be one of the key ways to find us moving forward. So you can go to the website to sign up. And then we're going to try to get a newsletter out a couple times a month so that people can stay up to date. And we're also really keen to hear from you, like what things you'd like to learn. There's a lot of different farm education going on, but our focus is backyard and neighborhood food. What I'll also share with you before I wrap up here and open up to questions is that one of my pilot project ideas is to have salaried neighborhood permaculturalists. So if you can just sort of lean into the idea for a minute that if you had 2 20-hour-a-week, 2 part-time salaried people in your neighborhood whose job it was, whose paid job it was, is to grow food in your neighborhood for everybody. And that person would have garden expertise. They would do the seedlings. They would make sure the food got harvested and distributed. I might say, well, I'll put sweet potatoes in my patch. Well, I'll put pineapples over here. But if you can think 5 to 7 years down the road with 2 20-hour-a-week people planting food and managing abundance and distributing what's there, how much food would be in a neighborhood? Would you, if you had, 20 households who each put in $200 a month, there's $4,000 a month budget right there. You probably spent, most households, I know that I spend more than that on fruits and vegetables. So how do we find creative ways to do this? I've been talking to some colleagues internationally about, how could we do a pilot project in different types of communities and write a curriculum for, again, salaried neighborhood permaculturalists. You could even write grants for passive solar hot water heaters on everybody's roof, or you could, they would know about pest management and they would, have chicken forage or eggs or whatever. That would be a very culturally specific thing by neighborhood, and you would organize work days. So if you want to help out in your neighborhood, then on Tuesdays and Saturdays from 10 to 2, we're going to be doing this. And, we can also pull in resources from the neighborhood that way. We could have a neighborhood rat-free compost. We could get a biodigester that has methane gas coming off it. Like there's all kinds of things we can do at that neighborhood level if people got paid. So that's the kind of job creation that for me is key. When I look at the food miles, that go into our, daily plate, you guys know all this, but, what's happening now with climate change is that we're getting failure across the food growing system globally, and particularly in the United States, in between the fires and the droughts and the floods and the crazy winter storms and, the disruptions in the food supply. Like we're up for some serious years coming up here. And Maui has this really unique place where we can grow food year round. And, 200 years ago, all the food that was eaten here came from here. And with a whole lot less variety of what we can grow, because we brought in so many other things, like even just what's on this page right here. I mean, like tomatoes and, peppers and radishes, like all these things, like most of them don't come from here, right? So by the time you've grown it in a chem-ag system, which uses petrochemicals, and then you put it on a boat or, a train or a truck, and it gets to the dock and it gets loaded on the boat that comes here in diesel fuel and gets taken to the grocery store, and you drive there, by the time you get it home, it's not that vital in terms of nutrition, but it's also, its carbon footprint is gigantic. So we need to look really long and hard at how we're going to change our food miles equation here on Maui, and we're going to learn to eat what grows here. And we're going to, what's our kuleana to either grow something ourselves, help somebody grow something, or buy local. So food security is the name of the game for me. My career now is really focused on that intersection of, climate change adaptation and agroforestry as a buffering strategy to protect watersheds and all kinds of things, but also, the local neighborhood food. We've learned that when you have really strong neighborhoods growing food and your neighbors, the crime rate goes down. Like we have all these cascading benefits that come from local food systems. So I think that's it. So let me stop screen sharing. Oops, stop share. And come back and open up to questions. And then, I don't know if we're going to necessarily go over to the Retree site, but I just want to let people know that I want to do a workshop with Rob Weltman or with somebody else, and we're going to go through that whole database and look at how it works. So any questions out there from folks in the audience?
Aloha. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi there, Jenny. It's Margot. Thank you so much. This is just amazing. Thank you, Georgia, also. So what is our next step then from this to get going on planting our islands?
I think what we're going to do is put together like a database of people by neighborhood, and we'll try to, if we can get 3 or 4 people in an in-person class, we'll do that. And so that we can just bring stuff to one location and people can take home their plants from there. So I would say that we just want to get you signed up. So Georgia, you want to chime in there? Oh, we lost Georgia. So I would say.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do would be to send an email to mauiohanagardens@gmail.com with your desire to have a food island or to be a garden ambassador, a food island ambassador for your neighborhood or your street or your block, and what area you're in, and we can go from there. Jenny will probably come and do some kind of a site visit, and then we'll get you started with the resources and materials that you need.
Oh, that's so perfect. I'm in Waiahu, and so I got a lot of nice, close neighbors that would benefit. This is awesome.
Okay, yeah. So Margo, if you have neighbors and if it would be really great if you could, get your neighbors hooeyed up, and then we can come and do it together. So, if we don't have to do that, pulling the neighbors together part, that's really helpful.
So I'll send you guys an email, and it seems like that's the best way to organize. Do you want to let me know maybe what time frame you are thinking of in terms of when you want to start getting things in the ground, or when you want to start with action teams, whatever?
Yeah, we've already started. We did one
Okay.
planting up at Hawaiian Homelands. We have another one on March 13th. We've done 2 plantings at the 2 different homeless shelters. We've done planting at the Wisdom Center for Autism. We've had quite a few go on the ground already. So, we could do as early as, end of March, or the 3rd week of March.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much.
Okay.
So awesome.
Anybody else?
Jenny, this is Joanne over in Lahaina.
Hi.
And so, hi. And so I moved here last July and I put a couple raised beds in. And I'm doing great with greens. And I actually have a couple neighbors that I share my greens with, which works out really well. But my squash just isn't like it flowers, it puts on fruit, but then the fruit gets like 2 inches and then it dies. So any suggestion, like, am I overwatering, underwatering? I mean, is it
No,
soil?
No, it's just that there's a bug they call it, that stings the blossom, and that just the fruit just doesn't do it. I have ants that eat the blossoms and they fall off, and it's not that easy to grow squashes here. So
Okay, good
that
to
might be
know.
one that, buy that from the farmer's market and spend your
Okay.
energy somewhere else. Yeah,
I feel so much
have big
better.
success. Yeah, and I had like cucumbers coming out my ears, and then I turned around and they were full of pickle worms. That was the end of cucumbers for me. And so it's like there's just
Yeah,
something.
I got one.
Good. Right.
So that's very, very helpful. Thank you. And then we do want to plant fruit trees and nut trees on our property.
Great.
But we won't be able to do that till later on this year because of some of the construction stuff that we have going on currently. So is this something that would be going through? I think I heard you say it's like a 2-year project right now, right?
Actually, it's a project as long as we continue to get funding. So we're grant
Okay.
writing, and we're going to reapply to the county for, continued funding. And we got a capital equipment grant from Atherton Foundation. We've reapplied already to the Hawaii Community Foundation. So we've had small, grants out the gate so far, with a pretty big one from the county, but we're going to try to double or triple our budget into the next year. But it really, we're going to be asking people
Depends
to
on funding.
give
Yeah.
testimony on our behalf about how great we are. And so we're definitely going to be, trying to get into this next budget cycle too.
Excellent. Thank you. This has been so helpful.
Good.
I have a question. This is Georgia. I have a question I want to voice from Carrie. She says we have an ulu tree and some citrus trees, and it's been about a year they've been in the ground. It's about 5 to 6 feet tall. Is it still okay to plant bananas, trees, and other understory items around it?
Definitely, and definitely sheet mulch too. So I would start with getting all your materials for sheet mulch, or we could come out and, if you want to put in another fruit tree, or you just want to just develop the understory for those trees that you already have, it's never too late. The soil fertility for those trees, they'll be so happy if you mulch them and put in companion plants. They'll be really thrilled. The trees will do very well.
Great. And this webinar has been recorded, I understand, and everyone on it can share it with anyone interested in a food island, right?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. So we'll post that up to the archives, and I can also, maybe I'll pop it out on the Facebook. Here's a link to the webinar for people to watch. We also have a
Great.
YouTube channel. At some point, we'll get that. Maybe we can also put it up on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We're learning how to do all this media stuff as we go.
And Jenny, this is Georgia. I'm hoping that we can get these recordings up at MauiOhanaGardens.org. So that's one of the things we're going to work on next week. So keep tuned. I'm hoping that these webinars will all be archived up there on the website over time.
Right. And if everyone on the webinar can help network the next one and invite at least one gardener or interested neighbor
Yep.
onto it, and it can grow.
Oh, and I have another question for you guys out there who are still online here. we need to buy more trees. So if you know somebody that's got a bunch of trees in pots that wants to sell or wants to donate, we'll take even your like 50 papayas, we'll take them, you know, and we'll distribute them out. So, you know, think of us if you have, if you see a friend who's got some sort of trees that really want to get planted, we will get them.
All right.
My name is Ellen, and this has just been remarkable. I mean, the intelligence and the inspiration and the ideas. I've studied permaculture a couple of different times, and you're very succinct. It's very overwhelming in a sense in Hawaii. I've studied on the mainland, and so this has been incredibly informative. I'm on the Big Island, and I got I got a link to come, and I guess it's okay for me to be here. I'm hoping it is. I, obviously can't participate in all the things you all are sharing, but I'm just blown away by just really intelligent, clear information and just great ideas for the community. So I'm very grateful to be here.
Oh, thanks, Ellen.
Yeah,
I
thank
love
you.
teaching. I have to say, I've really missed teaching over the last year because of COVID. You know, we haven't been able to do a lot of stuff. And we were doing a in-person class at the Hawaiian homelands, and there was several families with their keiki. And I was about to start, and I'm there in my overalls with the flip chart. And this mom says, "Stop, everybody stop. We have a real live in-person teacher." And the kids are like, "Oh, thank you, Auntie." You know, and it's like the kids are they're at home, like they don't have an opportunity to be out learning too. So we really want to get kids involved. And it was really fun to have the kids working in the garden too. But these webinar series are open to everyone. You can tell all your friends in the Big Island to come. We have a huge capacity to absorb people into the classes here. So
Thank you.
And Jenny, you have a good permaculture friend over on the Big Island, right? Gary?
Oh, I have a friend, Gary Rosenberg, who's got a farm out there in Hilo. He's in the Kilauea, and he's got a lot of animals, and he's got a permaculture farm, and he's a kindred spirit over there. And he was just written up in one of the local publications over there too. So he's like me. He's a climate change, permaculture activist, do it here and now. It's a get going, so. Okay, so anybody else? Any other questions? We have a little bit more time left, or we can end a little early.
Do you all deal with pigs over there in Maui? Do you have a pig issue?
Yes, we have invasive pigs, and if they can get in your garden, you're bummed. So one of the
Yeah.
things that we are going to provide for people that need it, everyone's needs are going to be different in their gardens. Some people are going to want to put fencing around their guild, their whole food island. So, and sometimes that can be wimpy chicken fencing to keep out chickens, but if it's pigs and deer, you're going to have to be a little bit more robust with your fencing. You also want to weigh in. So there's things to think about. But, I just bought a couple $100 worth of fencing, and it doesn't go very far. So, being able to, again, just sort of resource from your community. A lot of people have rolls of fencing sitting on the back 40. So I'm happy to find some free fencing, but but yes, fencing is a deal.
Yeah, I just knew that, but if you had any magic tricks, I was open to hearing them. Thank you.
Well, it depends on who you are. Like Uncle George, he's a wonderful kupuna farmer over here, and he's well known, and he has pig traps all over his farm, and he has an emu. So he's like, "Oh, I got 4 pig today. We're gonna have pig lao." So he just
feeds the people.
And he feeds, and he, you go to his place, and he's opens up the freezer and hands over like pork chops. And so he's, that's what other people do. It really depends on if you're a hunter or not, or if you eat meat or not. But, being able to trap the pigs, it's a lot of food for a community.
Yeah, they just caught a 192-pound one last week. So
they're
being caught. Yeah, they're being caught. What?
Yeah. And they're invasive. Like they're
oh,
an
yeah.
species, so.
Yeah, I've got to get some fencing up. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Nicely
Great.
done.
Okay, thanks, Tara. And looks like a couple of people have popped off already. But yeah, let us know. I hope you guys can join us for our next class. We'll be announcing that in the newsletter. We have a couple topics. We haven't quite decided what we're going to do as our next one, but they're all going to be very similar to this. And I'm probably going to also co-host with different people. So we're going to bring in some other expertise, not just mine. And again, we're going to focus on backyard and neighborhood food solutions.
Bravo.
Yay. Okay. Thanks, everybody. And I'll stay on for a couple minutes if people want to just ask me stuff, just one-on-one or a couple people. I'll just stay for a few more minutes.
I don't know how to get off.
You go to the little red button where it says leave.
Oh,
Okay, so Georgia, are you able to grab the stuff from the chat? Because I know that when you close the chat, some of these comments go away. I should take a minute and read through them.
Yeah, I can save the chat, no problem.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, thank you so much. This was really informative.
Oh, good.
I just wanted to say my husband and I moved out. We have 2 acres out past Twin Falls,
Mhm.
and we have so much land, and we've been trying to figure out what to plant, where to put it. So the timing of this was really perfect. But we have a ton of little baby coconut trees.
Great.
Probably like 20 or 30. We just need pots and soil.
Okay.
But yeah, we have a ton.
Okay, well, we can come out and grab them. I have pots and soil here too, so we usually
Okay.
grab them and pot them up when I get here. I'm also available to hire for design. So if you're looking for someone to come out and do like a consultation on site, I'd be delighted.
Yeah, we have a lot of space and we're just trying to figure out the best way to tackle it.
Right, and I will say, just sort of tooting my own horn, but good design goes a really long way in the tropics because things grow so fast and you turn around and you're like, I put that in the wrong place, or I didn't think the water through, or whatever. And like, it's more costly to fix it than it is to just think it through.
Right.
So yeah, we can
Yeah.
do, just a straight up consultation, or we can do a, we can map it, we can do it, whatever level of design you're comfortable with. So you can I'm the person that gets Maui Ohana Gardens email.
Okay.
So just email me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I have a truck and I'm happy to come out and pick up the trees. It'd be fun.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda.
Bye.
Okay, anybody else? Well, we got the last few minutes here. I've got, Lyman's here. And I don't know who the other folks are.
Hi.
Hi.
Dinner's almost done.
Okay, great.
I'm making a rice pilaf and a little cucumber salad.
Okay.
And then there's a sausage.
Okay, I have a couple more people online and I'm almost off here.
I know who else is gonna want, but I'm making myself a sausage. We have the chicken.
Okay. Okay, last couple people. You guys have any questions?
Rice and cucumber. It's not just cucumber, it's a little salad. Oh, you said cucumber salad.
Mahalo is putting into the chat that they want to talk fish, aquaculture, and they have some dragon fruit starts available.
Oh, yay. Well, it's just funny. I just had someone ask me about dragon fruit the other day and I didn't have any. That's what I've only had one dragon fruit plant come through my whole reality in the last year. Thanks, Lyman. That's great. And we can get on a call another time and talk aquaponics. The thing about aquaponics is that you have to really know what you're doing with plumbing and be really adept at managing that system because it takes a lot of fiddling. It has really high yields, but it has really high maintenance requirements too. There are some great aquaponics teachers here on Maui. One of our friends who used to work over at the university, her name is Michelle. What's Michelle's last name? Butch's wife?
farmer from Canada.
Anyway, she's a farmer from KNI, and she specializes in small system aquaponics. So Lyman, if you want to send me an email, I'll connect you to Michelle. And she has some really cool small scale aquaponics. If you want to get into larger scale aquaponics, you know, just be aware that they're fiddly. It's a fiddly system. Okay, thanks, Georgia. That was great. Totally seamless. I love that the chat had a bunch of stuff going on. Okay, so NRCS
Yeah.
is going to get us some fencing.
We're all
Let's get on that.
Yeah, they've got some interesting stipulations. For instance, I just learned recently they won't do perimeter fencing. They will only fence your agricultural operations.
Great, that's perfect.
Okay.
If they would give
Yeah.
us like 1,000
Yeah.
yards of fencing, that would be good, you know? So,
They do 80-20. They have a program for an 80-20 cost share split on fencing. And
Okay.
they will reimburse up to 80%. That's I believe the way it works.
all right, well, let's do that. I mean, I would totally do that. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks, gentlemen, for coming. Let us know if you have any questions. Look for you on the email. Ciao.
Good night.